had shipping lines from the continent of Africa to the United States. 1923. And his mentor, a lot of people don't know this, that his mentor was a Muslim. And that he was also influenced by Ahmadiyya. Right? And so you can see this thread. So this is not, our history is your history. And so I'm a convert to Islam, and I grew up a Christian. And if you know anything about African American Protestant Bible-thumping Christians, they don't tend to be very rational. And so, yes, so I grew up I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandfather was a Christian pastor, and so was my grandmother, right? So I was orphaned at the age of 4, and so my grandparents took me over. But I remember going to church, and week in and week out, there were pictures on the wall of a white Jesus. And when you go to Sunday school and you flip through the Sunday school lessons, all the angels were white. All the pictures of the prophets were white. Everybody in heaven were white. And so it makes you think, well, where do black people go? Where do black people go? And so when we come into Islam and we start reading this idea of, okay, Allah, and how the Quran says that shirk is the greatest oppression. To associate partners with Allah is the greatest oppression. If a person oppresses you in the way you see your creator, that's the greatest oppression. And so coming into Islam and saying that none of this stuff is Islamic. And I remember reading about a movement that Imam Warathuddin Muhammad, rahimahullah, he had a council called the Coalition for the Removal of Images of the Divine. I may be butchering it, but this idea of let us come up with a movement to remove images of God. And you may think this is simplistic, but so if you look on this wall right here, you see these images of, most of them are jazz musicians, African American jazz musicians. El Dorado Ballroom, the room that we're sitting in now, also used to be the first masjid in the city of Houston. Muslims, we leased this space out, African American Muslims, and we would have Jummah Ta'aleem here. A little bit of historical significance, right? But also this building was bought and built, was built by, in 1923 by an African American businessman, a coalition of businessmen led by Reverend Jack Yates. And so Jack Yates High School is also right around the corner from here. And so it was a country club for African Americans. Remember, we were pushed out of a lot of organizations. And this was a country club for African Americans where, business took place, but it was also a place where all these people that you see on the wall, Ray Charles, Etta James, Tina Turner, all of these people performed here. And so eventually the El Dorado Ballroom fell into, because of financial difficulties, it fell in the hand of other people, and it was eventually purchased by a Jewish man. And the Jewish man, the reason he purchased, he said that he would listen to the jazz musicians and he would hear the sounds coming out of the windows. And it was just such a beautiful sound to him. So he ended up purchasing, it was a dream of him, and then he turned around and gifted it to Project Row Houses, which is an organization here that we do work with here in Third Ward. So there's a lot of history here. So I'll pull up here, inshallah, so we can continue the conversation.
No, I'm just going to be real. This is the second time I've been here, and it just kind of reminds me of when I was younger, because a lot of people don't know. When I was growing up, I didn't want to be a comedian. I wanted to be a jazz musician. and a acute lack of talent led me to comedy. But on the real side, one of the guys in the band I worked with when I was like 17, 18, ironically was a Muslim, Brother Sterling. And you guys know how jazz clubs are. I was too young to go. I could work the jazz club, set up for the band, do stand-up. But when it came time to, after the show, I used to hang with him. I couldn't go to the bars or anything like this as far as Muslim. But I think I learned about Islam through the arts, if that makes sense. And I'm out of that generation, sister, where I learned about Islam through Malcolm. There was a time where I didn't think any other Muslims existed, even mattered. I remember being in 7th grade and they had the whole thing with Ayatollah Khomeini. And I remember like joining in on anti-Muslim sentiment because I didn't connect that we were all in the same boat together, which is sort of the magic of this dysfunction that we deal with these days. And learning Islam as, for lack of a better word, as protest religion. I'm going to say it again, learning Islam as protest religion. It used to be a thing where you go through the hood and people want to mess with you. You say you're a Muslim, people run the other way. We don't want to mess with those dudes. It was a thing where, you know, someone would pick on a sister, it'd be 3 or 4 Muslim brothers trying to chase them down. You know, and it just had that quality of life that we've been missing. Quite honestly, we've been missing. We're very intellectual about foolishness that happens to us, but we're not action-oriented, you know. And I still have great relationships with NOI, and I was with a comedian doing a comedy special, and he literally said, the nation and Minister Farrakhan saved his life. This is a comedian. I can't even refer you guys to his YouTube because y'all come back and like smack me. I mean, he is out there, but this brother said, yo, this religion, he goes, I'm not Muslim, he goes, but this religion, it saved me. And it's like, we really have to get back to it. I mean, we talk about the arts, we talk about all of this, and, you know, I just want to say it's a pleasure to be able to stand in front of you and speak and do stand-up. But there's something a bit lacking because all too often it's just entertainment. It's not education like it used to be. It's like if you grew up in the 80s and the 90s, I heard Public Enemy sing By the Time I Get to Arizona, which was an anthem against the state of Arizona and New Hampshire because they didn't want to honor Martin Luther King as a holiday. And that type of just clarity is something I learned from the arts. And yeah, it's a very appreciative thing. I see Paul Robinson over on this wall right here. And I'm going to be honest with y'all. I was doing stand-up. I saw Paul Robinson. This doesn't happen often. I actually lost my train of thought. I lost my train of thought because I realized how much this gentleman right here sacrificed as an artist. He wasn't Muslim, but he just sacrificed as an artist. And it's like, you know, our sacrifices, we got to realize is, you know, they're sacrifice for the community. I mean, we just can't do it for Muslims anymore. You know, we can't be Muslim-centric about this religion. It doesn't make sense. I'm not a scholar, but I'm like, you just can't be Muslim for Muslims. That's not going to work. The world's a big place. And just like jazz musicians, I don't know if y'all know this, but a lot of the jazz musicians back in the day, you go back to like Coleman Hawkins, Bean, those guys, you know, Islam was deep back then. You had them, you know, they were tied into the Ahmadiyya movement. A lot of folks don't know that. You know, Pharoah Sanders and guys like that. It's like this religion, I get a little bit frustrated. You can calm me down, Sheikh, but it's like, we got to get to work. I mean, for lack of a better word. So it's like, I feel inspired. I'm very happy to see everybody here. You know, even my daughter is here. My daughter, Miriam, is back. She might be asleep. My wife is here. I walk my daughter to school today. I walk her all the time. We make out the wall on the way to school. It's real cute. And she said something to me. And, you know, when your children put you in check, it's a little scary. My daughter said, Daddy, I grow up, I want to have 3 jobs. I said, all right, baby, what are the jobs? She said, I want to be a writer. I said, that's good. She said, I want to be a hairstylist. I said, okay. Then she said, I want to be a civil rights activist. And I was like, man, you have fallen off. We just got to get to work. I mean, if the young ones are telling us that, you know, it should reverberate for what we're trying to do moving forward. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, dear brother. So the agenda that we had, we collected a few questions from some of the people in the community. And the idea was to pose these questions and let our panelists speak on them. We don't have a lot of time, so we're not going to be able to go through all of the questions. But what I do want is, if you have certain thoughts, if you have certain questions on your mind, write them down, okay? And leave them on that back table there. And one of the things that Imam Khalis, and I'm going to sign him up for this before I ask him, one of the things that Imam Khalis and myself will commit to is trying to put together some brief answers to some of these questions. And we'll see if we can get Brother Usama and Brother Preacher Moss and Sister Sakinah to also give some of their thoughts. And we'll send that out with the IIC, Ibrahim Islamic Center distribution list, so that we can keep this conversation going. Because the worst thing that I think can happen is people come here, they hear these stories, they feel inspired, they walk away and it just dissipates. We need to bring it back to our community. We need to keep having the conversations, and more importantly, we need to do something about it. So again, if you have specific questions that we don't have the time to get to, write them down, put them on the back table, and inshallah we'll make the niyyah to get you some thoughts around those questions. So the one question, we're really only going to have one question for all of you. And of all the ones that I saw, you know, that were given to me, it's the most meaningful one. And we'll just start with Imam Khalis and work all the way around, and we'll close the circle by ending with Sister Sakinah. And then after that, I'll introduce Brother Keelan, and he'll close out the night. The question is, what important lesson or experience do you want to convey to all of us about knowing our history, about knowing black history specifically in this country? What lesson or experience do you want to convey? And then what does the black Muslim experience have to do with us? If I'm a Nigerian, if I'm a Pakistani, if I'm a Chinese, what does that have anything to do with me? Okay? It's a 2-part question. Lessons or experiences that you want to convey to us about knowing our black history. And then what does that have anything to do with me? Imam Khalis.
Bismillah. So Allah encourages us in the Quran to look to the sunnah of those who came before us. The example of those who came before us. Again, like I said, our history is your history. We're interconnected. And so where I want to go with this is, maybe not you, but maybe your parents, or maybe even your parents' parents, and maybe even you really don't know whose shoulders you stand on. And I'm talking about the black American, African American Muslim in this country. When you look at the civil rights doors, I mean, a lot of the rights that we have today, you couldn't even openly say that you were a Muslim. I mean, we're probably going back now with today's climate, but a lot of the rights that you have to be able to go